Welcome to the Attorney Post, your source for inside baseball talk about the legal field with the top attorneys in the country. Here's your host, Justin West.
All right, and we are live. Had a little glitch there. Welcome to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers who are at the top of their game and help you navigate the ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as we always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm joined with Travis Christiansen, who is half of the dynamic duo over at Boyack Christiansen Legal Solultions, and we're going to be talking with him about all the things he does. He is a generalist. Sometimes we talk to people who are specialists and only do one thing. And sometimes we talk to people who are more of your, I say, Matlock, generalist sort of lawyers. And Travis definitely fills that field. So we're going to be talking with him about all the ins and outs of practicing down in St. George, which is out in Utah. We're going to jump over here first and take a look at his website. You can visit stgeorgelaw.com to learn more about Boyack Christiansen Legal Solultions. Our first sponsor today is going to be injuryattorneyleads.com. So here we go. Injury attorneys spend a lot of money advertising, but it can be difficult to get qualified leads. Oftentimes you're paying for leads that are not qualified, or even worse, you're getting leads from the internet that are no longer interested in talking to an attorney, even if you can get them on the phone. These can cost anywhere from $100 to $500 per lead, and oftentimes you can burn through 5 to 10 of them in order to get a single prospective client. The solution is injuryattorneyleads.com. Injuryattorneyleads.com has people reaching out to us across the country. Once they fill out a form, well, that's where most other lead generation companies stop. But injuryattorneyleads.com is just getting started. They reach out to every single person who fills out a form and re-verifies their information on the phone before live transferring qualified individuals directly to your law firm. These are only people who have been in an accident and who want to speak to an attorney about their case. You can be sure that these potential clients meet your criteria for a qualified lead, and close rates average 60%. Set up a time to speak with one of our client generation specialists by visiting injuryattorneyleads.com and scheduling a time to talk today. Again, that's injuryattorneyleads.com. All right, and I am now joined with Travis Christiansen. Travis, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing really good. It's springtime. The flowers are blooming and our gardens are growing and it's getting warm.
Yes, it is. It is. It's beautiful outside. You're a little bit farther away from me, a little farther west and a little farther south, but I think we're both relatively in the same general climate zone. I love this time of year. It's absolutely beautiful. And of course, you've got some beautiful mountains behind you because Travis practices law out in Utah in St. George. And what's the name of that mountain range behind you there?
So that behind me, so the bottom of it is a little thing called Red Cliffs, and then above that is Pine Valley Mountain. What's really neat is just on the other side of that is a town that was settled by some of my pioneer ancestors in the 1860s, the little town of Pine Valley. So yeah, I'm born and bred, and my family's been part of the Southern Utah community since the very first days.
That's awesome. I actually wanted to talk about that earlier, maybe in the post show we can a little bit. I have a degree in history, and I did my senior thesis on the Donner Party, but we read a whole bunch of the stuff about all the different people traveling out west and the different groups of people, some of the Mormon groups, some of the, obviously in Utah, I'm guessing some of your relatives may have been or still are Mormons.
Yeah.
But obviously the whole Oregon Trail going up and everything else. I just find that area and that time period utterly fascinating. So we can shoot the breeze about that one later. Well, Travis is again half of the dynamic duo over at stgeorgelaw.com, which is Boyack Christiansen Legal Solultions, and your partner is Alan Boyack. I know he probably started the firm, but he may be bowing out in the not too distant future. So Travis really is soon to be at least the chief cook and bottle washer over there, and he'll be the guy you're working with. Travis in the oh, there we go. Interruptions.
I always forget something, but hey, the phone's ringing. So
hey, the phone is ringing. Hopefully, get your secretary on that one. So, Travis, in the pre-roll, we were talking a little bit, and you said you style yourself as like a Matlock, right, as a generalist attorney. And so, I'd love to talk with you a little bit. You guys do everything. You do everything from estate planning to small business startup to formation assistance to family law, domestic stuff, criminal defense, et cetera. I know you also served on the Washington County School Board. You're the 2010 president of the Southern Utah Bar Association. You're a recipient of the Utah Bar Distinguished Service Award, and numerous, I'm sure, other legal and professional recognitions, et cetera. So question number one that I always start with is, outside of that, what did I miss?
I think that part of it is we always focus and consider ourselves a little different than most attorneys. Is our focus is on this finding a solution for our client's problem, because when people come to an attorney, it's the last thing they thought they'd ever need in their life. And most of the time it's because something has gone wrong, one way or another. Either they've made this stupid mistake, even just driving down the road and got caught with a speeding ticket, or other things, addictions taking a hold of their life, or just a family relationship has fallen apart. And I found that clients just really need someone to help them through that journey, help them find a solution to the problem that faces them. And a lot of attorneys, when you look at the rules of civil procedure and it says you've got to do this and this and this and this, and they just want to march down this list. And it does a couple of things, frankly, in my mind. Number one, it racks up a bill that's probably bigger than it ought to be to get to a solution to the problem. And number two, it just prolongs the fight. It prolongs the pain and the battle and the agony. And for us, we get in, we do all of that that's absolutely necessary. We're not letting something slip between the cracks, but at the same time, we're not doing stuff that isn't likely to lead us to either good information or good outcome, so that we can be cost effective and get a good result and focus on a solution instead of the fight. That is that we attorneys kind of get a bad name for. One of the, I've got this picture of my mountain range. I also sometimes throw up my background, a picture of an alligator, because too often I think attorneys are looked at as kind of lying in wait to snap at somebody in a mistake. And, we do our job, but we don't do it in a way to try and destroy people. We're focusing on finding a solution, in particular in the domestic realm. If you've got kids, and let's say your youngest is maybe 3, you've got to deal with that other person for 15 years. And if you're in a knockdown, drag out fight for 3 or 4 or 5 years, that some cases can be, are you going to be able to work with them? Or if we get you in and out, find a solution, get that case done in 6 months to a year, resolve it at mediation, it's going to lead to hopefully at least some partial healing in that relationship, so that you can focus on being parents and taking care of the kids.
Absolutely. So it's really fascinating. As a history major, I was also a philosophy major, and Socrates himself had words, at least in Plato's dialogues. He says that the true wisdom comes in being a generalist, being able to know a lot about a lot of different subjects, not just specializing in one area. Obviously, there are times we do want a specialist, but I think there's definitely times a generalist who really has a good understanding of the various facets of the law can be much more useful. And it sounds like that really is kind of your philosophy. Why don't you tell us, Travis, a little bit about what got you into law practice in the first place? Why law?
Well, it goes back really, I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. My father was a high school football coach for 31 years and wrestling coach. And so I was raised in a competitive family. And at my exit interview, after playing 4 years of college football, my head football coach called me in, as he did everybody that was a graduating senior, and kind of, how was your experience? Wanted some feedback as a football player, but then also kind of his last opportunity to really sit down and give you some life wisdom. And my coach, he passed away recently, is Joe McDaniel at Center College at CENTRE out in Kentucky, in the College Football Hall of Fame, just a gentleman, a great man. And he said, in all my coaching, you're probably one of the top 5 or 10 most competitive guys I've ever coached. And he said, if you don't find something to do professionally where you can compete, your family relationship, probably your marriage and some of those kind of things are going to suffer, because you're going to just want to, you've got to compete. And so that's one reason, the competitive nature of the law, and that conversation with Coach McDaniel. Another reason is I love an intellectual challenge. The law, if anybody has studied it, it is complex. We write horribly. We love our $64,000 words because it can be confusing, but words have meaning. And so just the intellectual challenge of it. But really, the biggest thing for me in the law, and what I enjoy the most about it, frankly, to this day, is being able to focus and help somebody. I get the most satisfaction in my life when I've really helped somebody, hopefully made a difference in their lives, and helped them solve a problem. If I can just tell a couple of things that have happened to me.
Yeah.
I had a public defender contract for a few years, and I had hundreds of criminal defense clients in any one year. And it gives me great satisfaction when I'm at the grocery store and I'll run into somebody and they look kind of vaguely familiar, but they look different. And I can't remember who they are. And they'll say, hey, I'm, so-and-so. And then I remember their story of what but they look so much different. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, you're a different person. And that is hugely rewarding that I was able to help them turn their life around and move forward and make a positive difference. So that's why I got into this business, is to help people on that journey, on their quest to overcome addiction, on their quest to make changes and move forward with their lives out of the mess they found themselves in.
That's awesome. People don't think about the law as an avenue for personal development or personal betterment, but it really is. And if you have a legal problem, it takes over your whole life, right? It really can be just an oppressing thing. And having somebody there to help you out definitely is a very, very valuable thing. I know that again, it's the trademark of our podcast here. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any. And so making sure that you're talking to an attorney who's competent in their field or can guide you through the various aspects of law is very, very important. So you do a lot of different things, Travis, and I know there's not anything you specialize in, but if you were forced for the rest of your life to practice one area of law only, what area would that be? And why?
That is a horrible question. And
if you can only keep one of your children publicly now, which child?
And part of it is I've thought about, hey, I ought to just narrow my focus and do all of my marketing into this one area because it's easy and it makes me the most money per hour and it's the least stressful. But honestly, frankly, the divorce work I have done has informed and helped the estate planning work I do. The criminal work I've done has informed the business formation stuff I do and how I do that. I've done collections in the past, and so that has informed how I do my, contracting for business owners. So, you mentioned that generalist thing. It's hard to say one practice area, but I'll tell you, here's what the biggest kick I get out of things is just helping. If somebody comes in, even if they can't afford us and I can just give them a little bit of help, hand them a form, link them to a website where they can get stuff done if I think they're able to do it on their own, just to help. Picking one area, that's next to impossible because I think the areas of the law that I do, I'm better at all of them because I've done other things. I've seen what's happened when a business deal goes bad. Mm-hmm. I've litigated that. So I know when going in, how to structure it to minimize those risks of litigation. You get some of these guys that are business transactional guys, they've never seen the courtroom. They don't know how that contract language, other than in the abstract, but they've never had to litigate that. Yeah. The guys that are purely estate planners haven't done a lot of trust litigation. What happens? And we've done that. And so we hedge our bets, if you will, and draft to try and protect those things from happening. So I don't know that I would ever narrow down for that reason. I think each practice area informs and makes me better at the others. But also, I think it'd be kind of boring, to say I only do estate planning. I mean, at some point, drafting wills and trusts and powers of attorney, okay, it'll wake me up when you get that done, or just only doing divorces where you hardly see the courtroom that much. So the variety keeps me alive, keeps me energized, and keeps me engaged in serving people.
That's fair. I think it's an interesting philosophy to have. Is that I would be a worse lawyer if I practiced fewer areas of law. So I think
there are some things that I know I won't do. I mean, I've got doctors in my family, so we don't do medical malpractice. Thanksgiving dinner is better because of that.
Sorry, I had to sue you, Uncle George.
Yeah. We don't do, Social Security, disability, and some of those kind of things. Just but we know our limits and we refer those out. We've got great relationships with other people that if it's a case that, and the other thing that, hey, I understand. I've had cases dealing with banking law that my client really wanted me on, but I knew I needed some help on the banking law subject matter. So with my client's permission, we pulled in a banking expert to be co-counsel with me and help me do that. So, we're careful and we manage the cases in a way that's going to help our clients.
Gotcha. So let me ask you a question that I've been asking a lot of different attorneys to get their feel on things. Obviously, for the last year and some change, we've been under a pandemic. We've had lockdowns and shutdowns and everything else. How has COVID affected you? How has it affected your practice, your clients, the cases that you take, et cetera? What's been its overall net on you and the scope of your firm?
Really, as far as the effect, our firm, we had to make some technological adjustments, clearly, to be able to do consultations by Zoom. We were able to adopt technology where we could use phones at home, using voice over IP protocols for our phone systems. We adapted, you might be able to see it reflected in my glasses, but, I've
got the circle light.
Little circle lights, right? So I've had to basically create a video studio in my office. I've got a Blue Yeti mic over here. I've got a really good webcam. You've got mine just out of the frame. And I've got 2 circle lights up here so you can see me and the courts can see me. And I even have over here, you can't see it, a light to shine on my clients and another camera and another computer so that I can have my clients in the office because all of the court is virtual. But what that's done, really, it's made the courts more efficient. I had a hearing this morning that normally would have taken an hour and a half because I've had to go up, wait my turn in court, wait around. I can't do anything else. And it took 30 minutes here.
Yeah.
Because I did it sitting in my office with the courts. And so I'm hoping, frankly, that the courts keep doing it because it's saving people money to not have to have their attorneys travel up to the courthouse and sit there for review hearings for, initial appearances on a criminal case when you just say, hey, not guilty, give me a trial date. I shouldn't have to run up to court for that. Now, I do put on a coat and tie for court. I look the part. Yeah, that's been one thing, is it's made a lot of things more efficient. The other thing that the pandemic did, frankly, is it pushed more attorneys to do law the way I do, because they couldn't get a hearing. They couldn't pitch a big fit and have a big fight in front of a judge because the judges just weren't doing those. And so they had to get on the phone and say, hey, Travis, can we find a solution here? That has been a blessing that I think attorneys realize we might not get to a trial for a long, long time. We better try mediation. We better try ways to resolve these cases. So those are some ways that it really has impacted it positively. I think, being able to see a client face to face. I've got clients from out in your neck of the woods, one client in Kansas City, Missouri, and I've got clients from up in Detroit, just all over. And we're able to have a face-to-face conversation, see each other's body language, just because we've adapted to using the technology. So
yeah,
been a lot of positives. I think the negatives, if there are any, it's just been things slowed way down for several months while the courts figured out how to be online.
Yeah.
And there are some courts, I don't know if they ever got there. They were doing conference calls instead of video in some parts of the countries. I've talked to some of my friends from all over the country that are attorneys. It's in, and every state's been different, but it's been good to see Zoom, WebEx, Google, whatever, all these video platforms that people have adopted and are using, given us some efficiencies that are really nice.
I agree. I was talking to an attorney about a month ago, and he made the point I thought was really interesting. He says that, along with what you said, that it's definitely streamlined a lot of things. It's making a lot of things more efficient, but there are some areas that it'll probably never replace. And he does a lot of trial law. And he said, there's nothing that can replace the ability to, if you have a plaintiff attorney, defendant attorney, whatever it happens to be, and, a witness says something that helps your case, and you can look over at the jury and give them a glance right in the eye, and they see you and you see them, and you connect with them in a way. So, that's the problem with this digital stuff. I look like I'm looking you in the eye right now. And of course, I'm not. I'm looking at a dot on my screen. You're actually over here. So this is me looking you in the eye right now, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like I'm looking off screen and disinterested. So I guess there's definitely some areas I don't think that we'll probably be able to adapt permanently, but I do think it definitely is. It's been a benefit. I've enjoyed it a lot because, again, it means a lot of attorneys have become a lot more tech savvy, which means me being able to interview them has become a lot easier as well. I think I said this when I jumped on the phone with you, but I jumped on the Zoom with you. But I always enjoy the fact that a lot of attorneys know how to do the background stuff now and can have a custom background. And I did see the alligator for those of you just listening.
We talked about it. I better put the alligator.
Oh, we better get him up there.
That's just
get him up there. It's a requirement now. We got to see this alligator. Tell us the story about this. Oh, there he is. He's terrifying.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
We took a spring break trip to Florida, and we were about 10, 15 feet away from this guy. He was about 6 foot long, and someone in my family got a great picture. I'm going to try and move around so you can see. But, for those of us from the desert, swamps were really cool. And so sometimes I put him up there, just sometimes make a point. Look, I'm not one of those kind of attorneys. I'm not just out to lie in wait and chomp you at the bit. So yeah, but I thought he was a cool looking alligator, so I got a picture of him. But to your point, I really struggle trying to take evidence by Zoom, because the person is on your computer screen and they're this little 2 foot by 2 inch by 3 inch square, and I've got a 25-inch monitor up here because my eyes I'm showing my age, and and it's just hard. And so we've had to do some evidentiary hearings. We've won some, we've lost some, and we have been able to present evidence, but it is just not as effective as being in the courtroom. And the drama of, like you said, the guy, he looks over at the jury and says, yeah, see, you heard that, right? Or being able to have somebody say something and say, Your Honor, may I approach the witness? And then you take them up something they wrote under a sworn document and set it in front of them and say, would you please read line 12? I highlighted it for you. And it directly contradicts, and you can catch them in a bald-faced lie in front of the judge or jury. That's fun. It's really hard to do. Judge, can I share my screen? Yeah. It just isn't as effective as that dramatic pause of highlighting it and walking it up to them. And so, Utah, they've started to do a few trials in person. And I'm hoping that returns to normal, but I love being able to do a review hearing sitting in my office. It saved my clients money too.
I think that's exactly right. So a minute ago, you said you win some, you lose some. And one of my favorite questions to ask is always just this. Tell us about a time when you lost. Tell us about one of your biggest failures since you've been practicing law, but what it taught you and how you grew from it. Because, of course, a failure is only truly a failure if you walk away sulking, you go home and you never grow from it. But as long as you can grow from a failure, it's actually a win, just a more subtle win. So what's a time, Travis, that maybe you had a setback, you had a failure, something didn't go quite the way you thought, but what did you learn from it in the process?
It was, I was cross-examining a co-defendant on a murder trial. We were defending a guy accused of murder. And I was cross-examining the guy that actually pulled the trigger and killed the guy. And there's this saying that you got to ask enough questions to make the point. But if you ask one too many, you give them a chance to clean it up. And so I'm cross-examining this guy who basically had ratted out my client, saying, hey, he was a getaway driver, and pointing fingers at him. And we're kind of about 6 days into a 2-week trial. And I'm going, and I had it all set up, and I asked one question, and he gave me just the answer I wanted. And I thought, well, let me ask this. And he cleaned everything up. I asked one too many questions. And it didn't completely derail our case, but it didn't make it as effective as it would have been. And so one of the things that I've learned very often is, fortunately, where I'm at, I only appear in front of a half a dozen judges, and some of them I've been in front of for 15 years, as long as they've been on the bench and they were opposing attorneys before then, is to be able to read a judge's body language and know when, and even to read a jury's body language and knowing, okay, they've got it. I can shut up. I don't need to ask any more questions. it's not going to help my case. And so I think I've learned that sometimes less is more. I think, that murder case, I asked one too many questions of a guy. And so now I'm thinking, okay, do I really need to ask it, or is the point made? And I'm trying to read the body language of the trier of fact, the judge or the jury in that case, to know, all right, I can stop right there. I've won my point. Obviously, there are sometimes when, for the record's sake, you've got to make a record. In case anything gets appealed, that you might have to ask a few things, but those usually aren't those critical junctures where you can interpret something one way or another for a closing argument. So that would be just one example that I think of in court asking one too many questions.
Well, what's the flip side then? What's one of your biggest wins or biggest successes that you're most proud of?
I think a couple of that come to mind. Number one, we've been in business. I started my own thing in May of 2000, and I basically had my own practice with Mr. Boyack for the last about 10 years. But being a successful entrepreneur, running my business. So when people come in that want to start a business, I get it. I've been doing it.
Yep.
That's one. And then just, in court, this one was really funny. So it was a divorce case that had to do with child support. And this family was kind of living really high on the hog, but on the husband's taxes, he was saying he's only making about $1,100 a year. This is an older case, so it's just barely above minimum wage. And but he had a new truck, he had new boats, he had all these toys, but for child support for 3 kids, he's saying, I only make this. So so we had this hearing, and he was kind of arrogant, was representing himself. So this is why you should never represent yourself in court. This is a great example of that. And so under cross-examination, I basically got him to admit, I counted 6 different types of tax fraud under oath. One of the attorneys watching it was one of my heroes, who was at the time an attorney general for the state of Utah doing child support enforcement. He watched it, and at the end of the hearing, he grabbed me and said, so how many types of tax fraud did he admit to? I said, by my count 8. He said, no, you got him on 9. I said, oh, cool. So fast forward a few weeks, and an attorney in town called me and said, hey, Travis, I think you did my client wrong on this, and you took advantage of, okay, fine. But before we go any further, you need to get the recording of that hearing, and you listen to that hearing and then call me. About a month later, I get a call from that attorney. Back then it was all on VHS. It took a long time to get court reporting. And he called and he said, be nice. I said, okay, we will. And so, the lesson there is I understood enough tax law and tax implications because of having done some business stuff that I could do an effective cross-examination on what someone's actual income was.
Yeah.
As an example, he was way over deducting his miles from his income. I mean, he was deducting illegal miles, is one that I can still remember. But get an attorney, because a smart attorney would have stood up and said, don't answer that question.
Yeah.
And would have prevented what could have been a lot of carnage. I mean, we were able to resolve that case within a few weeks after that because we were prepared. We did an effective cross-examination, and then he did get an attorney who gave him good advice. So anyway, there are a lot of lessons in that story. That was a fun victory, but it's also a reason, a lot of people are afraid of the law, or they feel they can do it themselves. Right now, a lot of courts are putting forms online and those kind of things. And people are trying to do their own stuff. I wrapped up a divorce modification a few months ago. 2 people with bachelor's degrees, one had a master's degree. They sat down together and did their divorce online with the Utah Online Court Assistance Program. And the document that they produced, these highly educated people, had 3 direct contradictions within it. And so it was like one party would say, well, it says this. I want that, because that was the part that went to their benefit.
Yeah.
The other party says, well, no, this one should apply because that benefited them. But it contradicted itself. And so, they ended up paying me and another attorney probably more than it would have cost them out of the gate to clean up what they had done, trying to do it themselves. So, there's a lot of wisdom in why you really should hire attorneys to help you when you've got a legal issue and you're trying to create a business, when you're trying to get your estate planning done. I mean, I can tell horror stories about that I've actually seen help people try and clean up. Your divorce, especially if you've got kids, you better get an attorney to help you with your divorce. It'd be like me trying to pull my own teeth.
Well, and as a reminder, again, one of our mottos here is if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. And only a fool self-represents. That should be our next motto. I'll put it on the crest of arms or something like that. Only a fool self-represents. And I've told this story to our listeners before, but I actually self-represented when I was a teenager and I got caught moving a street sign. The cop thought I was stealing it. I maintained that I was just moving it. You couldn't tell from what happened whether or not I was or wasn't, but I wound up losing because I had no clue what I was doing. I just thought I was going to go in and tell what happened, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, sure, that's fine." And then that was a big mistake that I made as like an 18-year-old, way back in the day, over half a life ago at this point. But yeah, absolutely. So as a reminder to our listeners, especially there in St. George, down in Utah, you can visit stgeorgelaw.com. And you can learn all about Alan, of course. Right here is the other partner, and of course here's Travis. You guys have lots of great testimonials on your website, and if I'm not mistaken, you do offer a free consultation. If people want to come here and fill out the form and give a little idea about what it is going on, or of course they can give you a call at 435-375-3960. And as always, we'll make sure that there's a link to your website, etc., in the show notes below. So here in a minute, Travis, I'm going to go ahead and ask you my magic wand question, because I'm sure you, being a generalist especially, you probably encounter all sorts of different weird avenues or weird laws that you if you could get away with getting them gone forever, would make your life or your client's life easier. So think about that for a minute. But first, I am going to go ahead and read from our second sponsor. And of course, our second sponsor today is Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers. Are you a small business owner and you know that being on page one of Google is important, but you're afraid to work with an SEO or search engine optimization company because you know that SEO is both expensive and slow? Well, it doesn't have to be. Not anymore. Rocket SEO from hundreds of customers forces you to page one of Google safely and legally through the power of the news media. Rocket SEO utilizes national news media campaigns across a gamut of media sites that ranks you instantly in Google. You can boost your website's ranking in Google in 1 week or less with a simple system that leverages the power of major media companies and network affiliates of ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, as well as local affiliates and local stations from the Boston Herald to the Sacramento Bee and all stops in between to put you on page one of Google essentially overnight, oftentimes multiple times on page one, oftentimes for multiple keywords or key phrases. To learn more, you can visit hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. Again, that's hundredsofcustomers.com/rocket. All right. And we're back here at Boyack and Christiansen Legal Solutions website, which is, of course, stgeorgelaw.com. So, Travis, we'll ask that magic wand question now. If I gave you a magic wand, or maybe it's a genie lamp, if there's a whole bunch of things you wish you could change, but if you could change at least one thing about the law right now that really frustrates you or is an impediment to your clients, what would that thing be?
The thing that, and this may come as a surprise, I think that I'll be 50 this summer, and I look back at the things that I did as a kid that were looked on as being, just teenage hijinks, boys will be boys, and it is a prank. Like you're stealing or relocating, I should say, the street sign, or trying to turn it or mess with it. Just what used to be pranks and hijinks and stuff are now prosecuted criminally. I think we have frankly made too many things criminal in this country that didn't used to be. Mm-hmm. I really feel that creates a ton of risk for people. I'll tell people all the time, in your day-to-day activities, you probably commit at least 10 misdemeanors and probably a felony once a week, and you don't even realize it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
All right, it is just super bloated. I think from a macro perspective, I would love us to see us get to more of a federal system, as was our founders' design, that there were real true states' rights, states' abilities to do things instead of always having the federal government step on our heads and assert the supremacy clause, which the 10th Amendment had real teeth to it. But just in our day-to-day stuff, we've made a few too many things just criminal that really shouldn't be. That's one. Another thing is, I think that we have made some things unnecessarily complicated, and I'll give an example. In Utah, I do a lot of domestic work, and there are now in the Utah code at least 4 different parent time schedules suggested by our legislature. Now, that is an improvement. We used to just have one, and frankly, the judges were defaulting to that one because they didn't want to step on the legislator's toes, and they kind of said, hey, the legislature said that's what it is, so that's what it is. But so they've had to do that. But, they've really tied a lot of people's hands on some of those things. And some things have become overly complicated, but to me, it's just, we've over-criminalized things. Great example is just all the many myriad of collateral consequences that can happen to somebody with even just a speeding ticket. The collateral ramifications of that speeding ticket, even though it's a $125 ticket, I charge about $500 to $600 a lot of times to handle that ticket. Well, because I've got to spend a lot of time on them because of all the collateral consequences that come from that little ticket. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So there's just been somewhat of an over criminalization. The other thing that I really wish we could do is have the legislative bodies actually write law instead of the executive. I'm probably getting way too philosophical for most people that are maybe trying to watch this, but the bottom line is the majority of the laws that all of us typically have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is not written by our elected officials, either state or federal. They're written by bureaucrats. Mm-hmm. And it's been a cop-out because our legislature will say, in Utah, hey, Utah Office of Professional Conduct, it's your job to regulate the professional people in the state of Utah so that they don't hurt people.
Yeah.
And they stop. And then our legislature takes on, one that I know there's been a little bit of fight back on lately is people cutting hair. In Utah, it is a 2,000 hours of training and apprenticeship before you can legally cut somebody's hair.
I've heard that.
Now, there may be some great reason to that. I haven't looked at it closely, but it seems a little excessive, because my wife and I can go down and buy some clippers at Walmart for $30 and she can cut my hair. Now, is it going to look as good as the people I pay to do it? Probably not. But does somebody need to spend 2,000 hours in the classroom? Now, that's a year, 40 hours a week for a year.
Yeah.
No breaks, no vacations, no nothing. And they charge a lot of money for those schools. So, some reining in of regulations and having the legislatures, Congress and state legislatures actually get into writing laws instead of directing the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture to regulate our forests. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. What do we do with that? So you've got bureaucrats that are doing it and they're not answerable really to anybody. So.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir on that one. I've been a big fan of states' rights, and I've been a big fan of letting the legislative bodies make the law, because that's literally what legislative means, right? It's the root of that phrase. We're not a bureaucracy of executive decrees, or at least we're not supposed to be, but that does seem to be.
We've become that. And frankly, it's legislative fault because they've delegated too dang much. They've said, we want clean water. Director of the Department of Environmental Protection, please write some regs about clean water.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I guess it's faster and easier to vest somebody with some power and just say, okay, make it happen. We need to make it happen. You make it happen. But it does ultimately strip us of a lot of our real legal autonomy, our ability to be civic members of society, et cetera. So you're preaching to the choir on that one, at least here. I don't know about our listeners. Obviously, if you guys agree or disagree, please feel free to comment down below and let us know if you think we're barking up the wrong tree here. Well, Travis, this has been a good conversation, and I definitely enjoy your philosophy a lot on law. I think it squares a lot with mine. Again, I speak with a lot of specialists, and there's definitely always a place for specialists in the law.
Absolutely,
but I think there really is a great room. There really is a great need for generalists as well in a lot of areas of life, not just the law. And so I really do appreciate your philosophy. I always like to give the final word to my guests. So is there any parting thoughts or wisdom that you'd like to leave our listeners with before we sign off here?
Maybe two things. First off, I played at the offensive line in college, and offensive linemen, if anybody knows the game of football, we toil in the trenches. We are rarely called out over the loudspeakers unless we've made a colossal mistake. But it's our job to get down, get dirty, and pave the way for the running back and protect the quarterback. I practice law that way. My job, you're the star. My clients are the quarterback. They're the tailback. And my job is to pave the way so that they can have a smooth process through their legal difficulties. So, that's kind of how I do it, if you will, in my mind as an offensive lineman. And then the second thing is just a quote from Shakespeare that I've always liked. It comes from Hamlet, and it's what I try and live by. And if there were any words of wisdom, I'm going to borrow from the Bard, and that is this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. And so that's how I try and live my life, being true to who I am, true to my family, my heritage, true to my profession, true to my clients. And if I do that, but focusing on being true to myself, who I am, and not compromising that, helps me to be a better attorney. And it helps anybody that adopts that philosophy in their life, I think, and will have a better life.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. I know you got things to do, et cetera, as I'm sure do our listeners as well. But thank you very much, Travis, for talking with us today. I've been talking with Travis Christiansen, who is half of Boyack Christiansen Legal Solutions. You can visit them online at stgeorgelaw.com. They do practice down there in St. George, Utah. I'm Justin West. I've been your host, as usual, for the Attorney Post. Here at the Attorney Post, we are dedicated to bringing you attorneys who are at the top of their field in all different aspects of the law. And today I was very pleased to bring you a generalist who is a specialist in a lot of different areas, or is a generalist in lots of different areas, which is a very, very valuable skill to have as well. As always, of course, this podcast does not constitute legal advice. So if you do find yourself in a legal problem, contact a lawyer in your area. If you're in St. George, Utah, and you need a generalist, obviously, you could do far worse than working with Travis and stgeorgelaw.com. And again, you can find notes and links to his stuff down below in the show notes, wherever you're finding this podcast. You've been listening to The Attorney Post. You can find us online at theattorneypost.com. You can find us on our YouTube channel as well, and any place that you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Google, etc. So we would always appreciate a like and a comment if you like what you're seeing, and feel free to subscribe as well. And until next time, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye-bye. And there.